All right, what's up, guys? Back at it. A little chat with Dr. Michele, Coach Waleed. Michele, we'll start with you. Been 2 weeks since we talked last. How's it going?
Things are going well. Waleed, before we started recording, and I were just talking about the National High School Strength and Conditioning Association that him and I are both a part of. And we had a conference this past weekend up at Hoban, and it was good to, get to meet some other coaches from around the area because it was like a regional thing. So it was good to, see some different concepts and from a practice standpoint, the most interesting thing that that I witnessed or that I saw talked about was all the like velocity based training stuff.
Yeah, that's something I want to really, obviously, you really get into that. It becomes an expense to your weight room, but I would love to get into a little bit of that, with our guys, because I think it does serve good feedback. I know when it comes to technology, I kind of want to walk a fine line going forward. I don't want to be, so reliant on it that, it almost takes away from, the culture of the gym. But I think it helps, especially when we start getting into talking about dynamic effort, and especially with high school kids, having that visual, I think, helps. Because while we've talked about this a million times, where getting that message on how the kind of intent you have to put into a lift to develop that explosive power, if you can get a number in front of a kid, because you could tell them not to worry about numbers till the cows come home, but kids want to see it in PR. So if you could see, a lot of times zero point 0.8 meters per second is the big one, or whatever it is. If you tell them zero point 0.8 is what you got to get, that's an easy
Yeah.
cue, for them to really put that effort into the bar. What has to happen? It takes more than just telling them you gotta hit harder. You gotta hit it harder. Sometimes the message has to be delivered, and a little bit of a visual feedback, seeing that pop up, I think could go a long way. So it's definitely something I've looked at as a potential in our future. But didn't mean to go off too much, Michele, but tell us a little bit about what you guys talked about.
No, it just, he talked about the guy who's from Illinois. And I tell you what, talk about like a setup school system, Waleed. He has, this guy in Illinois, he has force plates installed in his high school to do analysis.
Wow.
Yeah. So you want to talk about investment. Holy crap.
Yeah, we were talking about before we got on here, Ryan Dugan, who I coached, and
Yeah.
um,
Shout out.
he's up at Brush and he does a great job and great teacher, great leader. But again, he's an administrator as a strength and conditioning coach for the whole district. You don't hear that, but you ask, well, how did that happen? Well, the superintendent was a former college track star. She understood and understands the importance of, collectively getting the district on the same page. And he's not only teaching high school, he's teaching the younger kids, he's
Mm-hmm.
teaching faculty.
Mm-hmm.
He puts out a nutrition and fitness newsletter, so it's just not everywhere. We need more of that. So we need that piece everywhere.
Yeah, seeing high schools invest in like the health, from what the way we look at it, not your run of the mill health class that every high
Yeah.
school kid takes, but really investing in the health education of the kids is something to behold. It's certainly, of course, all of us would love to see more of it. But teaching them about real nutrition, not just, again, not your ABCs of the outdated food pyramid or stuff like that, but really getting into, what good exercise is, from qualified people. That would be amazing to see more coming right out of high school.
Yeah. And to getting back to, and so I think we're having two different conversations, which is fine. But the first conversation is, talking about getting this stuff more mainstream and getting it out there so that, more kids are getting better results, staying healthier, performing to their, whatever their peak is, excuse me, wherever that could be, even if it's just for fun, you still can build a lot of positive attributes for a kid, for a person that they can take with them long beyond just, participating in sports. The other conversation is that actually getting the most out of, you know, your athletic teams. And so that data, it's just like you said, Mike, the thing is that the numbers don't lie, and you can give, as long as you've balanced that use of data with practice actually work, then it can be really, really powerful. Because like what he talked about was, um, what he would do is he would do drills. He would do like a jump test. These kids would have to jump 10 times in a row as fast and as high as they can. And so what he can do is he gets numbers from these velocity trainers, and then, you know, you can put them on the bar, and also, of course, and so then he can match that up to your max reps, your max outs with your force production. And then you can see who needs to work more on strength relative to their size versus who needs to work more on speed relative to their size. So the other nice thing too was that he talked about one of them. I think it's the VMAX Pro, I think it was called. And he said that the nice thing too is that it also, you can choose the parameters that you've displayed on the screen. So you can choose, so then you can have it in front of a kid while he's squatting or whatnot, and then, you know, or whatever the exercise is, and then he's able to see just those numbers, but you have all the data in the back end that you can look at later.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the metrics, even from just a, not even just something to help you coach, is that it'll tell you their depth of like their squat. And so it's like you have to go 0.6 meters, whatever the number is. Once you set optimal squat depth, then you can just have them go. You can tell them, you could set it up. Like if you have them trouble getting to full depth, I need you to go to that depth every single time, that number.
Yeah, that's a great, that's awesome, because we have people that are still kind of developing that, I don't know, like neurological comfort level with depth, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Where, you know, it's like hit and miss with the reps. You know what I mean? It's like they
Yeah.
can, you know, they can get to depth, but you can tell that they're not quite fully comfortable with it time in and time out again. So that would be pretty cool to have in our place, just to hit rep after rep. What is it, like a beep that you hear when you're at depth or something like that?
To be honest, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Odds are there's probably multiple things.
Yeah.
Or you could put up a screen in front of them or something, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but no, that would be great, because again, there is kind of that feedback you get where you feel that depth every time. You get, you know, your systems become more and more comfortable getting to that position. Because again, I'll see people, I've said, you know, you do it once, and then, you know, the next rep, you know, usually it's a sequence of bracing correctly or something like that. But doing it time in and time out, just like anything else, can get you kind of dialed into that position and being comfortable with it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Also, from a physiological standpoint, we really want to teach you how to produce strength, produce force when you're at these shortened or lengthened positions. You know, especially, you know, as we talk about a lot, I always go back to football. And football, first and foremost, before anything else, is a game of leverage. So it's can you stay in your position better than your opponent can stay in his position? Or can you knock your opponent off of his position? You know what I mean? In order to gain some kind of control over the play, disruption of the play. And then, you know, pretty much every other sport is like that too. Whereas, you know, maybe like baseball isn't quite as much about, it's not about leverage, but rather it's about reproducibility. So your ability to learn how to reproduce a certain movement pattern is also really important. Not only because we want to strengthen through the full range of motion, but then also you're developing that power and strength independent of where you are situated, because it is, a lot of sports is also reactionary, whether you're chasing after a fly ball, reacting to a fly ball, swinging a bat, or, you know, trying to make a move on a basketball court.
Yeah, absolutely. Most sport is reactionary. You know, that's why that would actually be a good way to try to, I guess, replicate that to a degree in the weight room. Whereas sometimes trying to I think at least, I think me and Waleed agree, sometimes trying to replicate the sport and it's, reaction effort becomes a little too, kind of like that circus act training you see in the gym where it's like you're trying too hard to produce the sport, but something like that can definitely teach the systems to go from static to dynamic positions on a reaction, whether it's, I've seen coaches do visual cues to react, more audio based cues, but something like that, we kind of stay in our, general to, you're kind of bridging the gap between general and specific, but a good way to produce that. One more thing before I forget, I was thinking about too, Michele, is the idea using something like that of training readiness for the day, right? So if you're, if you're someone that can move, for example, 185 on a box squat at given meters per second, and today you just can't even, come close to that, then, it could be a million factors. A lot of times it's sleep and recovery, but if you're unable to produce that, then we don't want to maybe give you the 12 sets of 3 that we have. Maybe we go lighter, you hit 6 sets of 3, you keep your accessory lower, and you get out and recover for the day. So it can help, the long-term auto-regulating of your program in check.
That would be great in season, especially if you're working with a team or if you're working with kids.
Definitely.
Being able to gauge, where their body's at, and auto-regulate from there.
Yeah, and what you could probably do too is, there's a number of different tests, that utilize this with or without a barbell. And so maybe what you could do is choose one of these tests and, and have your kids just do it really quick. And it almost can be like a dynamic warm up as well. And then you're able to get an idea about, what kind of velocity they're producing. And then that might start to become like an indicator, something kind of along the lines of heart rate variability, where, you're using the physiology to determine, intensity. Now, just to clarify, the thing is that if a kid is worn down, or, one of us, if we go to train and we're worn down, by working at 75% of when you feel good, when you're working at 75%, when you are using 75% of normal, whenever you're worn down, is like 90% of another week. So it's not that you're not working hard that day, it's that you're adjusting, you're listening to your body in what it's trying to tell you about what intense feels like for that day.
Yeah, it's the same concept that I do with a lot of, I say older, but that could be, over 35, even in a weight room, but where we might do, a ton of like leg curls or like pull through or something before squatting. So it's like you're a little worn down before squatting, but now you don't have to put the same amount of weight on your back to reach a certain intensity. It's the same kind of concept. You're still working at a given,
effort.
I guess effort. Yeah. A given effort for your current state, but it might not be, what you potentially could do from fresh. But again, our goal is longevity here. So you're able to work, heavy squats to you, with less stress on the spine. Same kind of concept.
We used to have in season, we'd still use, this is back in the 2000s, a Tendo unit, and say a kid would usually move it in the 1-1 to 1-2 speed for a box squat. If he's moving at 190, okay, and his body's not moving, he's not moving the weight as fast. He's hitting 1-3 or 1-4. You move him down to 165, 170. He's still hitting that 1-1, 1-2. He's looking at that number and he knows he's still producing that force, but just a little bit lighter weight. So,
yeah. Go ahead.
It's a great, because the percentages don't match up to each athlete individually, right? So there might be some athletes that can move 80% really fast, you know what I mean? And we've seen athletes go from 80% to 90%, and it turns into speed work to near max effort work, with 10% gain. And then there's some athletes, that get to 65% and they're struggling to get the bar moving fast. So the percentage is not concrete athlete to athlete, but looking at speed, obviously, could be. It's like we want to, for today's, target for the kind of speed strength we want to work, we want to hit this number, like, on the, whether it's the tendo unit or whatever, uh, implement you're using. And so again, it's more of an objective goal you're reaching, and it takes a little bit of guesswork out of it, because sometimes we're working up to a weight, eyeballing it. Okay, that looks about the speed we want, and it kind of, and then the kids want to put more on. You know what I mean? The kids, can I put on more? That feels fast. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's light. But with that objective number on the speed, it's like you better stay here, or else the weight comes off.
Right.
Yeah, and then the output starts to coach the kids rather than us having to rely on, them just listening to us, which is
Mm-hmm.
still important. But and it's still important to earn that trust.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, the differences in a few tenths of a meter per second are, imperceptible to us.
Right.
So it's not like they are the numbers are replacing us, but rather it's like having an assistant coach,
Mm-hmm.
by your side.
Right.
Yeah. We could say it till we're blue in the face. Dynamic, dynamic, dynamic.
Yep.
Move the bar fast. Move the bar fast. Oh, coach, this is lightweight. This is lightweight. Then all of a sudden, it happened back in the day, with the tendo unit, the kids were chasing that 1-1 to 1-2 range at higher and higher weights. It wasn't, oh, I wanted to be a max effort. No, I wanted to hit that 1-1, 1-2 at 190 because you hit it at 185. And now all of a sudden they're chasing that speed and not chasing necessarily the weight. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, exactly. And again, it gives them something to look at. It
right.
gives them, whether it's the weights on the sides of the bar that they're looking at, or it's a screen that they're looking at. It gives them further, feedback, or, in the motor behavior world, we call that knowledge of results. So we're giving them knowledge of results at the beginning, and maybe throughout also, but we're giving them knowledge of the results to tell them how they did. But eventually we want them to learn knowledge of performance, which is how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start to develop what that difference between going fast and not going fast truly is.
Yeah.
you know
We all like numbers too. We could
yeah
we could preach it to the kids all we want, and we could even pretend as coaches that we're above it. But we all love number PRs. We all love to be able to say what we did in the gym. With a number. What weight did you get on the bar? How high did you jump? We all like to have something objective. And like you said, kind of learning what feels good, what looks right, of course, is important. But having that aspect, and again, for the culture too, if I can get a bunch of kids in here kind of hollering a little bit, looking for that
Yeah.
number, come on, let's get 1 2 1 2 1 2. That's another aspect I think plays into the long game.
Yeah, and it allows them to compete in a positive manner. You know what I mean? It gives them something to look for, somewhere to place their effort. Rather than just old school, like yelling and screaming. Which is just, we can just do it better now. Which actually I meant to bring up too, Waleed. It's like thinking about that back in the day. Kids would have just gotten yelled at for, not working hard enough, or
Right.
just work harder, and sometimes they needed to, sometimes we all need a kick in the butt.
Yeah.
But other times it's not that we're not working hard. It's that, we just feel really fatigued, like when I was finishing with that baseball program that I did over the winter, and same thing with the female athletes, we'd squat heavy on Tuesday, and then they'd come back on Wednesday or Thursday, and then we would do like drop jump box jumps, and they just couldn't get as high as they could when we were deadlifting, because you're working the same muscles. Those muscles are kind of worn out, so it can't handle that, that eccentric loading. They're not able to produce as much force out of that stretch shortening cycle. And getting them to appreciate like that effort at a lower height is the same as if you were less tired hitting a higher height.
You're Wally.
What's that?
Oh, nothing. But anyway, all this stuff, like I said, it's definitely something I would like to see in our facility one day.
Mhm.
With the with kind of some of the velocity based stuff. I've even heard guys use it for more of a max effort feedback, whereas like
Mhm.
instead of again, instead of the percentages, obviously the number is going to be way slower, be a lower number on a velocity system. But there's a certain, you should have enough weight on the bar where when you're putting as much effort into that bar, it's going to move, about this speed. And you're almost working backwards there, where it's like if you're able
Yeah.
to move the bar with great technique, of course, I don't know, at 0.6, and your goal with a max effort, I haven't messed with the system too much, but maybe it's 0.3. You need to get more weight on that bar for that day and hit,
Yeah.
probably just a handful of reps. But I've even heard of it. That Chris or what's his name? Oh, Chris Duffin talked about that Kabuki strength guy. I heard him talk about that, and then I've seen it pop up a few times. But even in, you think of the velocity stuff as being fast, 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 but you might actually be looking for, slower speeds because you're actually working that lower end of the spectrum there.
Was there Michele, did he talk about when they start that from an age standpoint?
Yeah.
Or
Right away. Right away.
so right away, meaning freshman year?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I think he might even said some middle school kids too, because you can see again, if, the thing is that if somebody, what he does also is he uses the results, their reactive speed index, the RSI, they use that. He uses that to separate or categorize, I guess, the plyometric progressions. So the kids that have no reactive speed, they might be doing low hurdle hops, versus the kid that has high reactive speed, he's doing like drop jump, box jumps, so he actually does use that a lot. And then he also uses it, if a kid can't produce any speed, he just needs to get stronger, well, so if he's a young kid and the number's like really, really low, he uses as an indicator that they need to work on more movement quality, better body control, like he says, like below an RSI of 1.0. And RSI is your flight time divided by your ground contact time. So how long you're in the air and how long you're touching the ground whenever you go to jump. So if that number is a 1 or lower, so which means if it's 1, if I remember my math correctly, if it's a 1, then you'd be in the air the same amount of time that you're on the ground. And so that's even for people who don't have a lot of skill, that's a pretty uh, that's a pretty elementary or fundamental kind of level,
Yeah.
And so he said that he can get people to go from like 1.0 to 1.5 in about 8 weeks, and a lot of it is like just jumping in place, learning those better jump mechanics, learning how to take off better.
Yeah,
That kind of thing.
I could see that. With a lot of our starters, that would basically be your guys who don't have the ability to do another jump without essentially fully resetting. You know what I mean? Like you get up and you almost like have to think about it again and then go. So again, that would be from what I see, just kind of hearing you talk, that would definitely be kind of your motor learning guys. Stuff that we work on a lot in our youth program, getting the movement quality down, essentially learning your body in a weight room.
Yeah. And from what he was saying, that those people at that level, that's not even low reactive speed. That's not even low reactive speed. Yeah. Reactive speed. That's like no reactive speed.
Yeah.
So there's a differentiation between a kid who's older and he just isn't very, I guess, athletic or explosive, versus like a number that low is almost only indicative of somebody who just does not have, well-developed movement, or, almost any kind of baseline of strength at all. So, and then I think the last thing, guys, about that I just wanted to bring up is that it helps us coach better. Meaning, like, if we want to work on both components, like the dynamic effort versus, your max effort, and if you're trying to work on speed development, and how do you know for sure? Obviously you can run 40s and pro agility, 5, 10, 5s and that kind of thing. But this is one more way to keep us honest, to make sure that we're accomplishing the goals that we're trying to as well.
Yeah, we don't. It'd be talking about our facility again. We don't have a ton of room for like legit sprint work. Our turf
Mm-hmm.
really doesn't serve. I mean, you could maybe get away with a 10-yard sprint in there, but that's still pushing
Mm-hmm.
it with the amount of room you have to decelerate. We've got a little bit of grass patch around the building, but like we've always done, and it would, what could even improve more is with a system like this is, you can almost, especially with a younger athlete, I mean, you can almost guarantee that an athlete is going to line up and run a better 10 or a 40 if you can take stuff like your ability to push a 135 barbell, for example, at a certain speed, or just for your vertical jump, broad jump, those type of things. Anytime you can, show a faster production of force, more force, and a faster production of it, you can almost guarantee, unless the mechanics are just god awful in sprint, that they're going to move faster. Anything else?
No, I just think it's yeah, I think that was something pretty interesting, and definitely, something I want to keep exploring or keep, trying to better incorporate.
Yeah, it's definitely on our list as we start to get, more of the somewhat higher level athletes. I mean, you don't have to be like a, D1 stud to use that system. But as we start to fill out kind of more of these high school groups, it's definitely on my radar to, slowly start to build that. And I've really liked having the just jump mat in there as one. It's a, not quite as complex of a system as some of those. But again, just some of the data that we get from that. And like we talked about with the coaching aspect, just to be able to tell a kid, what his jump is, boom, that's great. Or you see the reaction where it's not as good. Just that alone not only picks up the energy in the weight room and the intent, but gives them that feedback. Like, what do I need to get better on? And if you tell them, this is where, looking at some of your lifts, we think you're weak, you got to hammer these accessories. You can't, when we get to this, the barbell work will be fun. When we get to this, you can't go through the motions when we do this. You want to get that up.
Mm-hmm.
We got to get, this is where you're weak. This is what's holding you back. You got to hammer these out. You got, I want you to take it to like 9 out of 10, difficulty level, on this accessory.
For sure.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Was that the kind of the big focus on the conference you went to there?
No, just that one talk. They did one. They talked about utilizing social media, promoting your weight room. They did another one talking about fundraising, finding money for your program, like through grants, state, federal, local grants, nonprofits.
Ryan, talk about GOTA.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Ryan and Mike Christinger.
Yep.
Yeah. So Ryan and Mike talked about GOTA, which is a training philosophy. So there's a talk about that. And then Joe Kin was on. He talked about doing neck strengthening stuff. So, and then I think a couple other things, but yeah, it was hard for me to, when they started talking about some of the anatomical stuff for the neck and whatnot, and I had kind of had to like hold my tongue a little bit, just from a from a movement physical therapy standpoint. It's like kind of know your audience kind of thing. It's the beginning level education for some of these folks on the topic.
Yeah, it's great. It's good stuff though. A coach that,
for sure.
When you talk about the neck strengthening, I mean, obviously it's not. It actually is more of an aesthetic muscle than most people think. I mean, nobody wants a pencil neck, but
Yeah.
it's especially obviously contact sports, but really anything. Yeah. I mean, if you think about the, the movement in even basketball and, going up to the rim there, I mean, the neck, I mean, even just small little things with me, sitting at a desk, my neck
sure.
my neck can get tight. So you're whipping your head around in a basketball game, soccer, whatever. Mm-hmm. Soccer's actually the number, I don't know.
Number one concussion sport. Yep.
I don't know if it still is, but it was.
I think so.
So, anything really, I mean, anything can be looked at, a full body aspect. So we actually dove into that iron neck a little bit. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
used as much lately, but it's a nice little tool to have there.
For sure.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about that conference, a lot of private sector representation there. Is it? I know it's kind of devoted to high school, but
Yeah, there are some people like me who do both, but I think the most of the people that I ran into were at least representing, I should say they were mostly representing the schools that they worked at.
yeah,
So there weren't as many people. There were a couple people there for sure. There's another ATC there who worked for some big clinic that
yeah.
ran, they had PT and ATCs and strength coaches. But yeah, mostly for the academic side.
Yeah, so I know Waleed's in it. I'm not, officially in it. They actually do send me all of their Zoom invites and whatnot. It's rare I can, their times are always kind of screwy running the gym, but they actually do still send me all their stuff. So
Cool.
seems like it's a good relationship. Again, sometimes it gets a little knotty between the programs and the private sectors, but it seems to be a good, kind of diverse representation in that in that group there. So
For sure.
cool. Run down on about 2 minutes there, Michele. Any
Okay.
kind of closing thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I just, well, nothing to add, I should say. My final concluding thought, this goes back to what we talked about one of our first episodes, in that you're teaching kids how to find new definitions of effort, of max effort, right? So they don't know what it feels like to go hard. Or, you know what I mean? You're always trying to push your limit, and this helps a lot with that.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I say, with kids, I mean, you can be a great communicator, but that's always going to be, it's the same thing. Like they bring in like the smart boards to the classroom. It's always going to help with that demographic, having visuals and things they can look at, because we all know. I say nobody's a great listener, but kids definitely can be a little short attention span. So just having that to look at, boom, good or bad, and that make a huge difference. Waleed?
Yeah. Just as usual, and with the youth program, we just locked in the summer block and pricing and deals and whatnot, got that out to everybody, and looking forward to the summer.
Yeah. Real quick, I don't want to interrupt you, but amongst all this talk here, how we talk, some of these kids like Michele's talking with are starting out with that, their times are, the reactive time is off and they need the motor control. Best thing you can do junior high is to get that stuff out of the way. So you get freshman year and you're ready to start building legit strength.
Yep. That's hopefully what we're doing with the youth, and
that's our goal.
That next step. Yep.
Good deal. All right, you guys, looks like we're going to cut it just in time here. Good talk tonight. Hopefully you guys have a great 2 weeks here, and we'll reconvene in a couple weeks.
Yep. Sounds good. See you guys.
Thanks, guys.